Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Southern Manx podcast. Today's host is myself, Orlando. Pleasure to be here, and alongside me is our resident host, Mark. And we've also got a special guest phoning in today from Chelmsford, JP. Welcome along, JP.
Thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to it all week. Looking forward to some good discussion on United. We enjoyed the pod last week.
Excellent. And Mark, you're in a different chair this week, so unusual for you.
Yeah, different chair, but same me. So bad jokes and abrupt opinions.
That's what we're here for. That's why we're all tuning in. So just to give you guys an idea of what we're going to be doing, we're going to be looking at the agenda of Stoke and Basel, of course, the recent games. We'll also be touching on the international break, and namely Marcus Rashford. And how he did. A little look at the Premier League roundup, as well as our usual features of tops and flops, and we'll probably dabble on a bit of deadline day as well. So this is the Southern Manx podcast by the fans, for the fans, and we're really hoping that you guys enjoyed today's pod.
That's all really nice, lads, but could you do it on a cold, wet Tuesday night in Stoke?
So our first topic on the agenda this week is the away game at Stoke, and the age-old conundrum of can you do it on a wet day in Stoke comes up once again. I think now we've got a record of we haven't won there in the last 5 visits or something like that to Stoke. We haven't really done particularly well on our away trips to Stoke. I just wanted to kind of touch on a few subjects on the game itself, and throwing the first one over to you, JP, really, and the fact that we made our first kind of obvious tactical change in a 4-3-3 and bringing Herrera into the mix. What did you make of it, Joe?
I think that the thinking behind that from Jose was he wanted that bank of 3 in the middle. I think he wanted strength and power in there. With Herrera, you get that. I think he just wanted to have, try and counteract that sort of narrow play that Stoke were going to try and push that ball through the middle. I think that's what he was going for. Herrera, I think, having not started so far this season, it was a good opportunity for him, his sort of game. I'm not so sure it really worked that well, to be honest. I think Stoke were able to get at us a few times. They got in behind a fair few times, and we just seem to have lost the fluidity of the first opening 3 league games.
Yeah, I agree, Joe. I think away at Stoke, I think the obvious choice instead of Herrera would have been Fellaini. I think for that game, if you were going to go for the 4-3-3, he would have been the choice there. I think if you look at especially this, we'll come on to the goals shortly, but the second goal, just his presence may have prevented that. But yeah, I don't think that worked, to be honest, the 4-3-3. I think Mkhitaryan was only influential when he come in the middle. I think we should use it, but I think we should pick and choose the opposition for it.
Do you think that perhaps Jose, being the very meticulous kind of guy that he is, would have maybe pre-planned this maybe quite far in ahead? Obviously, just coming back from the international break, and there would have been a number of players who would have played at least 2 competitive games, some of those 90 minutes, and Herrera being fresh, they thought maybe this might have been a reason for playing this system, maybe a little bit more energy, because I think on the face of it, you'd argue that this is probably going to be maybe a more defensive, or a system that Jose might use, the 4-3-3, with Herrera being a bit more naturally defensive. It just seems strange that it didn't quite work, when really, I suppose you could argue on paper and tactically it probably should have done. So, I mean, what do you think mainly went wrong as such? Is it the attacking plays, like you said, Mkhitaryan, or what went wrong, do you think?
I think, as you mentioned it as well, I think, you've got to look at the fact we had an international break, and I know we're going to talk about it in a bit more detail later on, but I think any sort of momentum you build up is scuppered, and then you take into account the fact that you might be making allowances for players playing games away with their country, making changes to the team and the formation. I think a combination of those things are what affected us, really. As you mentioned, on the face of it, I mean, it appears a game that was made for Fellaini. And although he's obviously been in action with Belgium, I think they beat someone 9-0, so I don't think it was a...
Yeah, Gibraltar 9-0, wasn't it? And then Greece, they won 2-1 away to qualify for the World Cup, so they weren't the most difficult of tasks.
No, I tend to agree agree with Mark. I think it was a game made for Fellaini. I think maybe if he'd been in that 3, it might have just given us that extra bite when we were going forward.
Yeah, so looking at the game then, obviously first drop points of the season. We drew at Stoke last season, 1 apiece. You might remember Wayne Rooney got this famous goal to beat the Bobby Charlton record. So 2-2. I think so. We went 1-0 down, and we will talk about this in this game and the Basel game. But for me, the left back position we have to sort that out. I think you can look at Bailey's positioning, but for me, Darmian has got to do better to get out to Diouf to stop the cross. I think that's defensive basics, right? Stop the cross.
Absolutely. I think that the issue for me with Darmian is having him playing at left back when it's not his natural side. You know, it's not a natural position for him to be in, and I think, you know, it showed itself against Stoke when we're going to play the bigger teams, the teams that are, you know, sort of going to cause us even more problems. If we have him playing there, I think it's not going to be ideal. It's not having someone that's natural on that side. I mean, I do worry about that position. I have to agree.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you on that one. I think sometimes Jose might be guilty of thinking he can do an Azpilicueta with Darmian and turn a right back into a left back. But I think Darmian is clearly a right back and a right back's right back in the sense that he's not a Valencia or a modern fullback where he's going to bomb forward and whip balls in and forget his defensive duties. He is primarily a defender and a right back. He clearly is happy to do a job for the team at left back and tries his hardest. But I don't think, like you mentioned, he's going to be competent in a game where you're going to have somebody coming at you with real quality, a natural winger or a natural attacking player in that position. He will be found out, I think, and absolutely we definitely need to address that area, I feel.
Yeah. So the other goal, so while we're on defensive, I think you have to put both Stoke goals down to defensive errors. So you got Darmian not getting out to the cross, Bailey's positioning, and then Jones, I think, lost his footing for the second goal. And those two have looked pretty solid up until now, Bailey and Jones. So obviously we'll look at that. The Fellaini influence, yeah. Definitely agree there. And then I guess on our side then, we got a goal from a set piece and another goal for the big man up front, Lukaku. Thoughts on him?
I think I'm really excited about it. I know you guys talked about it last week and Nick was waxing lyrical about Red Rom, but I just think we've got someone up there that can pretty much do everything. I mean, people obviously talk about his hold-up play, etc. But I heard someone saying that you've just got to look at what he can do, not what he can't do. I mean, this guy's got the lot, he's got pace, he can head the ball, he's strong as an ox. I mean, he gobbles up chances for fun. I know he's obviously missed a pen in the Leicester game, but it's just going to be free-flowing scoring with our wide players getting the ball into him. I just want us to get wide a bit more and put a few more crosses in for him. I know we've done that, but we just seem to have joy every time we do.
Yeah, I think he's in good hands as well, isn't he, really? I mean, obviously you've got Jose, you've got the coaching staff at United, you've got Ibrahimovic coming back, and you've also, of course, got Henry with him at Belgium. It's really interesting, some of the analysis that Henry's done recently on Sky with Lukaku. He's not, I wouldn't say he's been critical, he's just been really trying to develop areas of his game, particularly off the ball and whatnot. And what strikes me about Lukaku is that he doesn't seem arrogant. He does seem like he appreciates he's in a position and in a club now where he does need to grow, he does need to learn, and despite scoring, he does need to improve, and that he will have scored against Stoke, but there will still be question marks over his performance, and people will say, is he doing enough? And I think he so far seems the kind of character that can embrace that. So for me, that's really, really exciting as a United fan, that he's only going to get better. He's scoring goals. He scored now in the Champions League as well. I know for him that was a massive, massive, massive plus, because he's been banging on about playing in the Champions League now for a couple of seasons at Everton. He's got his chance at United. He's got his goal. So he's off to a flying start, and I think, really exciting times ahead for Red Rom. Yeah,
I like the way he runs in behind. I think he'll get goals that I love Zlatan, but Lukaku will get goals that Zlatan just simply wouldn't get from running behind.
Did we, Mark?
No.
We just didn't have that last season.
No. So, any other sort of big points from the Stoke game from you, Joe?
I mean, I know you just talked about it there. Just a couple of things. I think on the Jones mistake for the second goal. Again, I know you talked about Jones last week, and he has had a great start to the season, no doubt about that. But I'm also sort of in the camp that I'm not entirely convinced that Big Phil can do it over 38 or whatever it is game season with the other competitions. He did lose his footing, but I think if you're being ultra critical, I think I would suggest that he was ball watching a bit. And
as a former centre half yourself.
As a former centre half, absolutely. To be fair, I probably would have been nodding that in my own net, but that's another story. I think, although his man lost him, I think he was backtracking, he was looking at the ball, he was in the wrong position, he did lose his footing, but that does worry me a little bit. I'm just not so sure that he's going to be able to keep up that level of performance for the whole season. The only other thing I just wanted to mention while we're on the Stoke game was something that got me out of my seat, and I've watched it about 6 times since. I don't know if you noticed how Martial absolutely on the deck.
Oh, yes.
It absolutely turned him inside out. It was brilliant to watch.
Yeah, that was fantastic. I mean, yeah,
sent him for a pint of milk, 6 eggs, and a newspaper. He absolutely tore him a new one, didn't he? Bless him. And I think that kind of shows perhaps maybe the kind of players that we should be having in our team and the kind of players that we don't. That's why Juve, obviously now, bless him, is at Stoke, and we've got Martial. So I think he's been absolutely brilliant. It's not the first time. I remember a couple of instances pre-season where Martial has had some brilliant footwork, turning in defenders inside and out. So I think he really has come into his own this season, and he's really taken a real positive attitude and really grabbed the opportunity with both hands, reflecting in his goals and his assists, and again can only be a positive for us, I think.
Yeah, see, competition for places, I think, is the key. I think you know, I want to see him play, of course, but you want to see him play because he's hungry and he wants to do it. And it looks like when he's coming in off the bench that he's looking to make an impression, and that can only be a good thing for the club, really, at the end of the day.
It's good to see him smiling as well, Mark. I think, you know, last season, to be perfectly honest, he looked like he'd been slapped with a wet fish for most of it. And, he actually had a bit of a smile on his face the last couple of games, and that's really good to see. Yeah, good. I mean, so to recap on the Stoke game then, I think, look, we drew there last season. I think if we're talking about evolution of this squad, you think we've only got a point from the game. Yes, we've scored another goal, which we wouldn't have got last season, admittedly. A bit sort of surprising, I guess, that 2 defensive mistakes has cost us the 3 points, because that Jose will be absolutely livid with that, I'm sure. But you think that's an early lesson at what is probably a tough away test at this time of the season, which can only kind of, you know, you learn from that as the season goes on, perhaps. Yeah, I mean, we haven't lost a game, have we? At the end of the day, we've come away with a point. I think, there are positives to take from it. I just think that being in a winning position, you're never going to be entirely satisfied coming away with a draw, especially when a defensive error led to the equaliser.
Yeah.
So overall, guys, a point away from home just after the international break. Not the worst result in the world, but I think it shows how far we're coming, really, when we're finding that disappointing. And last season we snatched a point. Previous seasons there, we haven't really looked like we were going to win the game. And if we have a look at the other team in the league at the moment on the same points as us, City, 10 points. We have a look at how they've got their 10 points this season. It hasn't exactly been convincing in a couple of those games. So I think that holds us in good stead going forward. And overall, I think we can be pleased.
Yep.
So moving on to our next topic, which was our return to the Champions League and hearing the famous anthem, which was really, really nice to hear again. I think you could see what it means to players like Lukaku and that coming out onto the pitch and looking around, and the atmosphere of the ground was amazing. So where we should be, and hopefully long may it continue, and I hope we can get a good run in this competition if we get a favourable draw and we continue in this rich vein of form. So obviously a 3-0 win at home to Basel. Some interesting changes again to the starting 11, perhaps maybe not what anyone might have anticipated, despite obviously having played earlier on the weekend and the international break and a few injuries and fitness concerns. What did you make of the starting 11, JP? Was that something that surprised you? Probably namely the Ashley Young at right back, I think, caught a lot of people off guard.
Yeah, it did surprise me. I think, especially hasn't featured so far this season, it was a bit of a surprise to see him coming in. I mean, I didn't obviously realise until afterwards, heard Marina talking about it, that Valencia was away in Brazil for a qualifier with Ecuador, which obviously sort of half explains it. What I would suggest is, with Darmian coming in and playing against Stoke, I know he played at left wing back, but just surprised that maybe he didn't get the nod ahead of Ashley Young to play as right wing back for the game against Basel, really.
Do you think that's more of a concern maybe at his attacking attributes, and that he maybe would be classed more of a defensive defender, if you like, rather than what maybe Valencia would offer going forward? Would that be an argument, do you think? Or
yeah, I mean, you're probably right. I think if you're looking at sort of our nearest understudy in terms of what a player can do to Valencia, then on that right-hand side as a wing-back, it probably would be Ashley Young. Yeah, so I think you're probably spot on with that point, though.
Because it begs the question, doesn't it, Mark, really, Jose's confidence in Darmian, if he's happy to put him in at left-back and quite often over players like Shaw, who are a natural left-back, but when it comes to having a vacancy at right-back, he doesn't put him in there. You know, what does that maybe say about Jose's thinking in that position?
Yeah, I think he actually thinks that Darmian is more naturally suited to the left side for some reason. I mean, I know, obviously, come from the Italian league. I'm not sure if that was his position over there. I know from the Euros with Italy, that's where he was playing him. It seems strange, he's right-footed, so why would you not play at right back? But there you go.
But perhaps vindicated with a brilliant assist from Young, really. It was like rolling back the years, dropped the shoulder, quick change of direction, didn't give the defender any time to recover half a yard and whipped the ball in and, gobbled up.
Yeah, like you say, Ashley Young at right back was a strange one, but probably right decision, got the assist. Darmian probably doesn't get that assist.
No.
I also thought with the new lad Lindelof coming in, if there was another naturally English speaking player alongside Lindelof, so with Smalling the other side, that could help. Obviously we had the two centre backs banned for the game, so Lindelof was given his debut in the competition. So I thought maybe Young, more experienced head, maybe that would have swayed his thinking as well, with Valencia doing a lot of air miles over the international break. So yeah, bit strange, but probably vindicated in the end.
Lindelof, in a post-match interview, Joe, described his debut as he thought he went very, very well, and he was very, very pleased with it. What are your opinions on his debut?
Listen, I think when a team comes to Old Trafford, like Basel did last night, with, let's be honest, sort of no intentions of trying to do anything other than sort of park the bus and try and come away with a point. I mean, that bus was so well parked, it was practically still in the garage, wasn't it? I mean, they came out. They came out a bit, but I mean, as a centre half in that sort of game, I mean, I thought he did okay. I don't think he was particularly tested. I think that he done all right. I think he done all right, but I think he's going to face a lot sterner challenges than that, to be fair. But at the end of the day, you can only perform against what's in front of you, and I think you've done okay.
Yeah, I think it's interesting having a little look earlier at some of the stuff that Jose's been saying, and Mark mentioned about the centre-backs and the choices and availability that we had. Jose's, and kind of to quote him here really, talking about your centre-backs, if you wanted to anticipate next weekend against Everton, I would probably play Bailly and Jones, because today they didn't play, because they are fresh, because it makes sense for them to play again. But then 2 days later, we've got Burton in the League Cup, so Victor Lindelof obviously and Smalling again. So we need this in the Premier League and the Champions League. I have to choose the players in relation to their quality. And he goes on to speak a bit more about Lindelof, and he says, when I know in the Premier League I'm going to face one of these defensive walls, probably Victor is the best to come out with the ball, to attack spaces in midfield and to find people in between the lines. So it's interesting to see that Jose, not that this is probably a surprise, is very, very meticulous in thinking not only about the teams he's going to be playing in his formations, but the personnel he's going to be using, and that he's obviously earmarked Lindelof as somebody to break, as you mentioned here, come in between the lines, break down the defensive wall. So he's obviously looking at his technical ability, perhaps maybe more than his defensive side. So it'd be interesting to see what he brings to the table in that respect, don't you think, Joe?
Yeah, absolutely. I think obviously he's one of our sort of more comfortable centre halves on the ball, just by what I've seen from him so far. I've also obviously watched some footage back from when he was at Benfica. I would also suggest that, you know, Jose is very, very, very clever. We know that. He's an intelligent guy. He knows how to work the press. He knows how to protect his players. And I would suggest that, you know, there's a little bit of the Mkhitaryan from last season here.
Yeah, absolutely.
In that he's played in the Super Cup against Madrid. You're not going to get tests like that every week, but he hasn't quite stood up to it. And I think maybe he's trying to use a positive to talk about when Lindelof's going to be best to use. But I also think, knowing Jose, that there's parts of it in there that are actually about protecting him until he feels he's up to it, building his confidence and getting him game ready. And I mean, games against, you know, Burton and people like that, with the greatest respect to Burton, they're maybe not going to, you know, provide the sternest challenge at the back. So yes, probably is about the fact that Lindelof's one of our most comfortable on the ball, but I would also suggest that it's Jose being quite shrewd and protecting him there as well.
And I think, you know, going on that personnel and lineups and how players have performed, our fan favourite Fellaini's done well again there, hasn't he, Mark? And he had quite some influence in the game. I think Graham Souness was praising above Pogba in the game, in fact, saying that he wished that Pogba would be a bit more like Fellaini and get the ball popping. So high praise indeed. I don't know if that is coming from Souness, but an interesting performance, a very good performance from Fellaini again.
Strange feedback from Souness. Just before I want to talk about Fellaini, just before we move on, very quickly, on the surface is a routine 3-0 win, but I still think the left back situation needs to be sorted out. Blind was found wanting a couple of times. Again, Lindelof, first it was his debut, but he lost his man a couple of times. I think against better opposition we get punished there. So, and I think that's why Jose's reaction after the game was very much a case of, you know, it wasn't positive on the players. I mean, he was happy, obviously, he'd won 3-0, but on another night, that could have been a bit different. So I think we just need to be a bit careful on that, and I hope he's addressing that. Yeah. But yeah, the big man, Fellaini, a bit gutted for Pogba, leading out the side, back to the Champions League. I think that would have been a great moment for him to kind of... He's had a good start to the season. It would have been lovely for him to keep up the momentum there. But
Captain on the night as well.
Captain on the night. But yeah, Fellaini, what can you say? I mean, Mourinho loves him, and he's turned the fans around because he does the business.
I think that's a really good point from Mourinho, isn't he? He has this ability to kind of turn players who you might call average players or squad players or fringe players, and he can give these players this kind of belief to make them almost think like they're world beaters. And Fellaini clearly has the support of Jose, and I think that is reflected in his performances. I think I've seen him busting the gut, getting into the box a few times, Fellaini. But for the same token, he did that very well for Everton. You know, he was more of an attacking player. He was kind of almost playing in, you know, in the hole, if you like, and supporting the striker. So I don't think it's completely alien to him, but I think we're starting to maybe use him in that as well as the obvious defensive abilities in the air as well. What did you make of his performance, Joe?
I think you make a really good point, though. I mean, I probably should start by saying that I've never been in the sort of Fellaini hate club.
Controversial.
I honestly haven't. I've genuinely always thought, you know what Fellaini can do, you know what he's good at, is how you use him. And I think you touched on it there. I think the issue with Fellaini previously was the way he was being used. Trying to use Fellaini sort of as Van Gaal did, as a sort of holding, creative, deep-lying playmaker is never going to produce results. You know, if you're utilising Fellaini by getting him in that middle, breaking play up, laying balls off, going for the 1-2s, getting himself in the box, getting on the end of things, generally being a nuisance, then you're going to get the best out of him. And I don't think that's rocket science. I also think that his confidence was knocked badly by the way he was used, because he didn't play very well because it wasn't his game. But now he's being used in the right way. I think Jose's built his confidence up. You know, he's forever saying how important Fellaini is. And I think it's a real positive, and I think it's credit to Fellaini for sort of sticking at it and winning the fans around, really.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's different kind of stage now, isn't it? Because difficult when you're looking at someone like Fellaini in a side that used to contain, you know, Ronaldo and players that would play on the break with fantastic skill. And obviously a few bad seasons later, you've got Fellaini running round and you're sort of struggling at home to the lower teams in the league. It's easy for fans to get on the back of these types of players. But like you said, credit to him because he's plugged away. And I tell you what, Mourinho said after the game last night, he's one of his most important players. And he proved exactly why, because he does that sort of business, you know?
He just offers us something different, Mark, doesn't it? I mean, it's just something else we haven't got. It's another dimension to our midfield.
What about the other Belgian? Another goal for him, Lukaku?
Yeah, another goal. He can't stop scoring, the lad, can he? I mean, what can you say about him? He just takes his opportunities, doesn't he? As I mentioned earlier, he's a finisher. He is a natural finisher, and I think he's going to continue to take chances like that for the rest of the season. Long may it continue.
What impressed me again there was his desire to get to that ball for the goal. I mean, Blins basically just stood a cross up to the back stick. I think he had to get in front of 1, 2, maybe 3 players out of the way to get in front. It wasn't an obvious one that just landed on his head. You know, he had to fight to get there, and he did that. And then to manage direct that into the top corner, I think really shows and outlines his desire to want to succeed, to want to score goals, and to want to prove to people that he is the man. And so far, you know, his goals are speaking for him.
Absolutely. If you look at that goal as well, he's almost on his way down, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
Ball, I mean, the ability it takes to, you know, to direct a header like that, the ball coming at pace, defenders all around you at the best of times, but when you're already on the way back down, I mean, it was a great header. Yeah,
it wasn't a whipped cross by any means, was it? It was stood up. It was just a flat, just, you know, what floated to the back stick, and, you know, it wasn't a bad cross, but for the same token, he had to, you know, manufacture his own space and an angle to get his head onto the ball to put it in the place where the keeper weren't going to get it. So, you know, great credit to him, I think, for that goal. You know, it can be, you know, maybe not given the credit for that goal and what was involved in terms of his movement, and then, like I said, getting his head onto a ball to put it in an area the keeper can't get it. So to me, that was really pleasing because it wasn't an obvious goal that was just crossed in, side foot, bottom corner. You know, he had to work for it. So, you know, it's pleasing because sometimes his motivation and his desire to run off the ball and do some of the harder work can be questioned, and I think that he's proved some of the doubt was wrong with that, and hopefully he's got the buzz for that now, and long may it continue, as they say.
Yeah, quite another thing I quite liked from the game, we touched on it earlier, but the competition for places. So Rashford, I thought Martial had another good game on the left wing. I thought he showed good desire, beating people, cutting inside. I think that was really positive. But then you bring him off sort of after 70 minutes, good 70 minutes work. And then that boy Rashford comes on, gets another goal. We've got a section where we'll talk about him more, but competition for places is the point where I'm going with this. I mean, is great. Is fantastic at the moment, I think, especially on that left-hand side. I'd like to see him all three of them, him, Lukaku and Martial, in the same formation, but we haven't seen it yet.
We haven't seen it yet. I think it's something that could happen, but yeah, I mean, especially in attacking areas. I mean, we've got cover at the back. I think in attacking areas, it's not so much cover as in we can like for like replace top players with top players, especially with Zlatan obviously signing, hopefully back around. I think it's Christmas time, isn't it? They expect him to be back.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, definitely great to have that competition for places and players that can also play in more than one position as well.
Yeah, so final thoughts, back in the Champions League, 3 points, 3 goals, clean sheet. Only negative for me was obviously the Pogba injury. Hopefully that's not too serious. Any other thoughts, guys, on that one?
Just on Pogba, just wanted to mention that I was gutted for him obviously when he came off, but it was really pleasing to see sort of how he was visibly, you know, chuffed to be leading out the team at Old Trafford on Champions League night. I was sort of really particularly that good.
I think for me, Jose Mourinho stuck out from the fact that he was positive, but he was also pragmatic in the sense that he used PlayStation. The players started playing a PlayStation football at one point where we were, I think, either 2-0 or 3-0 up, and we started getting a little bit complacent. So I like the fact that Jose isn't being perhaps maybe last year over negative sometimes, and perhaps being over critical of his players. I think he's getting the balance much better now, because he obviously seems much happier in himself, that he's able to give the praise where praise is due, but he's still at the same time erring on the side of caution and saying, listen guys, we're not the finished article here, and we do need to have no mercy and finish the games properly, and I like that side of it, because you need to get the balance right. So all in all, yeah, really pleasing.
Yep, onwards and upwards.
So in the next section, we're going to touch on one of the men at the moment, because we've got a few who are in rich vein of form, but a certain Marcus Rashford and his influence in the last few games, whether it be starting or coming off the bench. He's been making an impact, setting records, another debut goal in the Champions League. Been doing fantastically well for club and country, but we'll start, of course, with his influence for United. What's been one of the standout features for you, Joe, in terms of Rashford's contributions this season?
I think for me, the main thing and the most notable thing is that this guy takes his opportunities without sort of complaint. Starts, then on the bench, that sort of thing, in and out. But when he's on the pitch, he gets the ball, and every time he gets the ball, it excites me. I just feel like he's going to do something. He'll either take it by someone, or he's playing a little 1-2 and sort of sprinting down the wing to get the return ball. That with the classic United players, you just get that feeling something's going to happen every time he gets the ball. And I feel like he's so focused that, the lad's not even 20 years old yet, and it doesn't matter whether he's coming off the bench, whether he's starting the game, nothing phases this guy. And I think he's just sort of block by block, building himself into a better player each time he plays.
Yeah, unbelievable. I think great. Probably the legacy from Van Gaal was FA Cup, signing Martial and giving Rashford his chance. And I think, like you said, he's just taking it with both hands. And when you see him play and you see the ball at his feet and he's taking people on and he looks so positive, it just, and now he's added a bit of sort of muscle to his frame as well. It just reminds me of Cristiano, and I know that's a massive shout, and he is a young lad. It doesn't put too much pressure on him, but his confidence, his mentality, and his end product now is starting to come along. I guess the only thing that there's a question mark about him is adding the goals, so double figures consistently season after season, which, like you said, still a young lad, so I think that will come with time. But
yeah, it's something that I wanted to talk about in this section as well. Is the thing is that all those positives you mentioned, but I would tend to agree. I think my only I've been hypercritical. Sometimes it's the final ball and the finishing. But again, the lad's 19 years of age. He's going to continue to work on that. But what I've heard, he has one of the best, sort of most level-headed attitudes, much sort of more mature than years.
Yeah.
Wants to work hard, wants to wear the shirt, wants to play, doesn't complain when he doesn't. I think he's got all the tools and the attitude to continue just to get better and better. You said obviously being like Ronaldo, a big shout. I genuinely believe that having that sort of mixture of everything, he really could be one of the best in the world at some point.
Yeah, and do you think so longer term, sort of, I guess two questions. If he has a good season this season, would you reward him with the 7 jersey? And number two, position-wise, where does he play long term? Is he going to sort of do the Ronaldo sort of left wing coming in, or is he a number 9, Michael Owen-esque in behind defences?
Absolutely. I think on your first question, the number 7, I can't really think of anyone better to actually take that shirt he embodies everything United's about, really, doesn't he? I mean, he's a Manchester lad.
Yeah.
He wants to win. He wants to be sort of the best player he can possibly be. He's got the right attitude. I can't see anyone better really taking that shirt when you look at the legends that have worn it prior to him. I think he'd be a great shout for the number 7 shirt. In terms of positionally, eventually I would like to see him play down the middle, but I just feel at this point in time in his career, and when you look at the sort of personnel that we have in the squad at the moment, with Lukaku up top, obviously scoring the goals, 6 and 6, and then Zlatan coming back, and you look at his age, I just feel like at this moment in time, while he's still developing, out wide, on that left-hand side, cutting in on the right, or even on the right, going down the wing, I just think that's the best place for him at the moment, Mark, because at some point, obviously, I would like to see him down that middle, but I just feel while he's developing, while he's improving as a player, you haven't got quite as much pressure while you're not sort of, leading the line in that central striking role. So I think it's the best place for him at the moment. Would like to see him down the middle at some point.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with you there, Joe. I think also for a bit of continuation, because he seems to be playing in that kind of position for England, doesn't he? Because Harry Kane seems to have the 9, if you like, nailed on in the 4-2-3-1 or the 4-3-3, whichever England decide to play. So I think in terms of him getting a bit of routine and a bit of consistency, probably you're right in that wide left of a 3 attacking position is probably going to give him a bit of consistency and allow him to build his game, develop physically, mentally and whatnot. And I do agree with you. I think he has all the attributes to be a world-class striker one day. Even not, he would still be a world-class winger, but I do think, similarly to Martial in the same sense, that they both got something which could make them an outstanding striker. A little bit like Henry when he was younger. He came from that sort of outside left, cutting in on his right, into becoming a striker, and I think that both of them, and particularly Rashford, could certainly do that in the future.
So goals target wise this season, what do we think he can get? I mean, if we're looking at obviously Ibrahimovic's tally last season, obviously we've got him from sort of December onwards. We've signed Lukaku to replace that. I would be looking to Rashford to at least get double figures. I think he should be pushing on this season. I think he's going to play a lot of games. We're in a lot of competitions. So I think for me, he's got what a platform now to really go and cement yourself at the club.
Absolutely, I tend to agree. I mean, I would be looking at him to chip in with at least 15 goals this season. Obviously, I think you've got to be mindful of the fact that he's not going to get, he's not going to play every minute of every game. You've got to take sort of game time into account, but I'll be looking for him to score at least 15 goals, and I think he's more than capable of that. Yeah,
and love that he was kissing the badge. I mean, obviously, it's great for every fan when they see that, but for a local lad, like you said, hit sort of not zero to hero almost, come from obviously the city that he plays for, and hit the ground running, and it's just fingers crossed with him, really. I
think there's a bit of authenticity, isn't there, when there's a local lad come through the academy, he's a boyhood fan, that's his club, when he kisses the badge. I think that means a little bit more than when a Brazilian's come from Flamengo, played 2 games for Bolton and starts kissing the badge. I think it's a little bit more, it's a bit more authentic, so I think that resonates with the fans as well, and it's great to see.
Yeah, and
also sorry, go on, Mark.
So did well for England, showed good character, because he was at fault for the first goal. Don't like him playing on the right hand side, but there you go. And then obviously got the second goal down at Wembley. Was that the winner? I think.
Yeah, the winner.
Yeah.
So again, another
technically an assist for Dyer from his. We'll call that a studied corner.
Yeah,
that from the training ground. Although I don't know if it was
England
quite
training
that.
Ground.
I'm sure you'll claim that.
Yeah. So again, like I say, I mean, Fergie was always a bit against players playing for the national team. I know Nick's got his opinions as well, because you play for the club, not the country. But for me, at the moment, it's game time for him, and I think that can't be a bad thing. He's still learning the position. If he can get some goals as well and benefit the country, that's no bad thing.
No, absolutely, and playing in a similar or the same system as well.
Yeah. Any other highlights from qualifying that anyone picked up on?
I think the only thing I would mention was I heard Michael O'Neill interviewed in the week, and he just really impressed me. And I think just a nod to what Northern Ireland have achieved. I mean, they're
great
not
record
quite there, but they're all but secure, aren't they, in a playoff spot? Excellent records with limited resources. So I just think a nod to Northern Ireland. Congratulations to them for all but getting that playoff spot.
Yeah, great shout.
I think what's really impressive is you look at the other nations that did well in the Euro just gone that were surprises. Your Albanias, your Hungaries, your Austrias, and your teams like that. They've really faded away, and they're absolutely nowhere in these qualifications. And obviously, Northern Ireland have backed up a strong campaign in the Euro and gone on to, like I said, all but qualified. Wales, of course, are still in with a shout in a fairly difficult group. But it's good to see the home nations particularly backing up a strong performance in the Euros with a strong qualifying campaign for the World Cup.
Yeah, I mean, even Scotland, I think England got found out a little bit at Hampden, but they're still in with a shout. I guess the one thing, and we'll touch on this in the later sections, but the Dutch football is having a bit of a bad time of it. I think they're not going to qualify.
Not very sexy at the moment, is it?
No, I think
second competition in a row, isn't it? Because they didn't qualify for the last competition, and that was that's with the newfound controversial way of the first two qualify and the third goes to a playoff. So they didn't even finish third in their group.
Yeah.
And I think that was Iceland and it slips me now, their last group.
Yeah.
So it was a group that really third should have been pretty much a guarantee. So to not do that in the previous campaign and to now be pretty much, well, they're going to make hard work of it if they are going to get there. They're going
to struggle.
It's a struggle because they're considered the European powerhouse, aren't they? With your usual suspects, your Spain, Germany, Italy, France, Portugal, England. Those are your teams that you would always say would qualify for a major competition. And for them,
there's even a recall for the 36-year-old Robin van Persie, wasn't
yeah, he's in. Yeah. So we've got another international break coming up, I believe, in a few weeks' time.
In October, isn't it?
Which will again disrupt a bit of momentum. Hopefully, we will have by then in the league a nice long running winning streak. But yeah, I think from this time, Rashford, what a boy!
Absolutely.
I've been watching him for a very long time, and I still don't know what it is good at.
Welcome back, guys, and we're going to move on to the last section of today's podcast where we're going to cover our usual features of tops and flops, and we'll be looking back at Nick and Mark's predictions from last week, and then myself and Joe will be adding our tops and flops. We'll have a look at a little Premier League roundup. We will touch on deadline day, and then we'll also have a little look going forward, fixtures and expectations going forward, really, for United. So Premier League roundup. If we have a look at the fixtures really from the weekend, I think obviously the standout fixture from the weekend would have been the early kickoff. Two of our rivals for the title this season, Mark. We had Man City versus Liverpool. Obviously, the main talking point is going to be the Mane red card. What was your view on this, Mark?
Yeah, big call from the ref. I think look, it's going to divide opinion. In my book, it's a red. I think, yes, you can say he didn't mean to kick him in the face, but he has kicked him in the face, and the lad's gone off to hospital to have treatment, fractured jaw or whatever it was, cheekbone. Obviously, Neville said in commentary, the rewards are massive. If he nicks the ball, he's in on goal, it's a goal, and fine margins in the Premier League, but it's dangerous. It's kicked him in the head. So that was a big one for me. We'll talk about the Ritchie incident at Swansea probably as well, because that was a very similar issue, but the defender pulled out, so was only booked. But one thing for me that I thought in the City-Liverpool game, red card aside, Klopp got his tactics absolutely wrong. You go a man down, you try and stop the goals. He didn't, and he got punished, and City took him apart.
Yeah,
So.
do you think he was quite naive there, Joe, touching on what Mark said, after going obviously 1-0 down and 10 men? He didn't seem to address that problem really until half-time, and it looked like they were just trying to swim with their head below water, really. They were going nowhere fast.
Do you know what it is for me? Like, everyone talks about Klopp, and obviously I respect him as a manager. I respect him as a man, actually. I don't obviously know him, but from what I've seen of him. But for me, do you remember that old show, Can't Cook, Won't Cook?
Yeah.
For me, Liverpool can't defend, won't defend. Under Klopp, and I think, that sums it up. They had quite a lot of the ball, actually, and they looked quite dangerous before the sending off. But as you said, I agree, just done nothing to address the fact they'd lost a man, and they paid for it.
Thoughts on the red, Joe?
It's a red for me.
Yeah.
It's a red for me. I mean, when you look at it, I was quite surprised at sort of some of the big name pundits and the way they reacted to it, saying that it wasn't. For me, his foot's high. He's caught him in the face. What else do you need to know? It's a red card, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm going to be a bit different. I didn't think it was a red card, to be honest. I'm going to just throw it out there. It's just to be different. I can see why it was a red card, and I think it is very, very close to the line. I think if he doesn't go with his studs and catches him with his studs, I don't think it's a red card. I think, yes, the rewards, what the pundits were saying, are that he scores a goal. In my eyes, having played as a forward previously as well, and having many a goalkeeper rush out and try and win a ball, I think you almost naturally, what struck me is that Mane didn't really seem to even have an eye on the keeper. He was so single-track minded on the ball, and that almost played to his disadvantage, really, because if you see somebody steaming out to you or towards you there, and it's clear he probably wasn't quite going to nick it, you'd almost half pull out, but he was 110% committed, like I said, with studs showing, and I think that's why he got the red card. But anywhere else on the pitch, any other player other than the goalkeeper, I don't think they get sent off. But for the same token, I can understand why it's a red, and I don't necessarily disagree with it being a red, but my opinion is I think he probably could have got a yellow, but I can see the argument for both.
Yeah, so 5-0, convincing victory. Elsewhere, we had Tottenham went to Everton. Quite a surprising result there for me. Everton seemed to roll over a little bit there, 3-0. And that man, Harry Kane, I think it'll be out of him and Lukaku who gets anywhere near the Alan Shearer goal record. But he's got up to 100 now for Spurs. Am I right? Is that right?
Yeah, 100 goals for Spurs. Yeah, I think going back to obviously the result, I think it was the manner of it for me, lads. I think they were just dominating from start to finish, didn't really offer anything. And it was just sort of the manner they were just swept aside, which was quite surprising to me.
Yeah, I think many people had earmarked Everton, especially at Goodison this season, with all the reinforcements and the players that they've got in the sense of Rooney and their ambitions going forward to start to break into the top 6, 5, 4 clubs in the league. You'd have had perhaps Goodison down as a bit of a fortress. It's quite a comprehensive win really for Tottenham, quite routine you might argue. So that's quite surprising. So hopefully they take that form into the game they play against us at Goodison soon. But yeah, I was quite surprised at that, I must say. Yeah.
Elsewhere, you had Arsenal keeping up their they beat the lower teams at home, convincing against Bournemouth. That guy Welbs obviously on the score sheet.
4 out of 4 for Bournemouth as well, lost now, which is not good.
Yeah, I mean, whenever they talk about Eddie Howe as future England manager, but I don't know, sometimes you think, can he set up them teams to defend? It's all well and good, playing nice football, but granted he's got limited resources there. But yeah, West Ham got their season off to a start on Monday night, 2-0 against Huddersfield.
Quite disappointed with Huddersfield in that game. After they'd started so well in the league, they never really looked to get to grips with the Andy Carroll factor. And Mikel Antonio, back from his injury, really looked like he wanted it there. And it really, for me, only looked like there was one winner in that game.
Yeah. So looking ahead to this weekend, obviously we've got Everton on Sunday, big game. But there's also Chelsea-Arsenal Sunday, which should be interesting. Burnley travel to Liverpool, City to Watford. Joe, I know you've been impressed with Watford's early season form.
Really impressed. I think Marco Silva, I was impressed with Hull when he was there. Just the way he's got them drilled. They seem to play sort of very dynamic, fast-paced game. They're solid at the back, but they're quite progressive going forward, and they really try and get at teams. And I really like the way he sets his team up. I think Watford have been a real surprise so far, and I think they've done really well. And I can see them sort of continuing that form on as well. I think the key for me is that partnership that Chalobah and Decore are forming in the centre. They seem to be on the same wavelength, and they played really well, especially at the weekend.
Yeah, and beat Southampton convincingly away, which is we've got coming up in a few weeks' time. But yeah, I think interesting point you make about Chalobah, because Chelsea have obviously sold us Matic, brought in Danny Drinkwater for 35 million quid, as well as the lad from Monaco, Bakayoko, but all the time they let Chalobah walk out the door. I'm thinking, it doesn't make sense. Why wouldn't you not give him a go? Young lad, come through the youth. I don't get it.
Well, exactly. And it's not just him either, is it? I don't think they sold him. If I remember rightly, he's on loan to Palace, but they let Ruben Loftus-Cheek out the door this
another
summer
one.
as well.
Yeah. So interesting. So yeah, any other kind of highlights from last week or looking ahead to this weekend, guys?
I think Brighton got their first 3 points, didn't they, of the season, which was good for them. Hadn't scored and then scored 3. 3-1 victory in the end at home, so maybe that'll kick-start their season. And I think going forward, I think you picked up there, Joe, the Watford game at Manchester City. I'd have that earmarked really as a potential banana skin for Man City, because Marco Silva, I know, will have studied that game in a lot of detail. He's set up his sides with some pace. He likes to play on the counter, and that's why his signings have all got pace going forward. So I think with Man City's backline, he could hurt them. So could be an interesting one, that one.
So now to the
tops and flops.
Tops and flops. The names on everyone's list.
Well, we have been scratching around who scored to try and get the stats and trying to come up with maybe a few left field ideas, as well as some maybe usual suspects. And obviously, Mark, yourself and Nick have had a head start on this one. So for me, my tops and flops, I'm going to go with Red Rom as well, Romelu Lukaku. Early season form doesn't lead me to suggest otherwise. Agreed, it'll probably be out of him and Harry Kane for the Golden Boot. I'd be more than happy for Harry Kane to win the Golden Boot for the 3rd season in a row and finish second in the league if it means that we finish top, because he seems to have a habit of finishing second for Spurs but finishing top in the Golden Boot. I've also earmarked, piggybacking a little bit on what Joe said really on the Watford idea, the Richarlison going forward. I think he will be bit of revelation, a bit like maybe Mishu was for Swansea a few seasons back. Again, a little bit left field. I think he could be really good, and I think that based on the game of United at the weekend, Choupo-Moting.
The big man.
Did really, really well.
Big danger man.
Yeah, I've gone for something a little bit left field. You never know. You've got to be in it to win it, as they say. Could come back to haunt me. It could be a one-game wonder. But he looks like...
He's got a cracking Barnet as well.
He has, absolutely.
He
That's
is.
always worth a shout. And I think now that they've perhaps got rid of Arnautovic, they need somebody else to maybe step up to the plate and do something for them and score them a few goals. Crouch is obviously getting on a little bit. And, maybe he might be, hopefully for me, a one-season wonder perhaps.
Right, Gordon, give us your flops then,
For me, again, maybe a little bit controversial. I'm going to go with Steve Parish, the Palace chairman. Again, piggybacking a little bit on what Nick said in regards to Ronald de Boer. I do not care what result you get in the first 4 games, whether you lose your first 4 games 3-4, 5-0. You cannot sack a manager 4 league games into a season. This is not some Ronald McDonald Mickey Mouse guy who found his FA coaching badge in a packet of cornflakes. It's Ronald de Boer. Just his playing career alone should buy him enough time to justify what it is that he's trying to do. That to me screams panic. That to me says that the club don't know what direction they want to go. It means that they don't really want to take the direction of they want to start playing good football and maybe progressing as a club and as a culture, and that it is all down to results and staying in the Premier League, which I respect. But for the same token, it's short-minded. It won't get them anywhere in the long distance, and they will just have that revolving door effect. Your Sam Allardyces, your Roy Hodgsons, your people who do 2-3 seasons to keep you in a league, and they will not get anywhere. And for me, that is just not the way that the football world needs to be going, really. So, not a player, but that's the way I've gone with that, the first one. Second one for me, I see him a lot with the Portuguese side, and now at Manchester City, Bernardo Silva. Probably a bit of a controversial one because there is no doubt he is an extremely talented young man, and I've seen him do some wonderful things with the football. But he slows games down something chronic to literally walk in pace. Might suit Guardiola with his tiki-taka possession-based football, but I think in a very competitive front line for Manchester City, if he doesn't add something very quickly, then the pace of people like Sterling and Sané, alongside already Gabriel Jesus, obviously Aguero, Silva in behind De Bruyne, he will find himself quite quickly slowly down the pecking order if he doesn't actually add something and maybe speed up his game. Certainly got the potential to do it, but he needs to react quickly in my opinion. And then lastly is Oxlade-Chamberlain, which again for me is a bit of a sad one because of big money, and I'm a big fan of both Bernardo Silva and Ox. I think they've got great potential. I wouldn't have minded Ox at United really. I think he's got something to offer. But going from Arsenal to Liverpool, I admire him in respects that he's made a change to go to a different club, but what has he really gained? He's gone from a 4-0 hide into a 5-0 hide in the space of a fortnight. And I don't think he even started the game. He came on because they got a man sent off. Maybe he didn't go to Chelsea because he didn't want to play in the right wing-back position. Again, I respect that, but I'm not really sure where his career's leading. It's another one, I don't know if it's an Arsenal thing, whether it's an England thing, whether it's a Southampton thing, but Oxlade-Chamberlain and Walcott seem to have the same career trajectory, really, and I'm a little bit worried that they're two England players that haven't really fulfilled their potential. So those are my thoughts, really. But let me pass over to Joe, because I am blabbering on a little bit here. So, Joe, what are your tops and flops?
Okay, so for the tops, I've gone with Harry Maguire. He's strong as a ball, he can head the ball. More impressively, I think he's really comfortable with the ball at his feet. Bringing it out of the defence, laying it off. Really impressed with him so far this season and last season as well. The second one I've gone for is Nathaniel Chalobah. Obviously signed from Chelsea, as we touched on earlier. He can pass the ball. Again, great vision. I know in the modern day game there's no such thing as a box midfielder, but I think he's as close as you're going to get. And again, that understanding he struck up with Decore in the midfield, I think he's really going to kick on this season. Thirdly, he's only started one game, but to be honest, obviously don't like to say it 'cause he's a Liverpool player, but he's one of the best players I've seen so far. He's only played one game, and he only played because they had another game midweek against Hoffenheim for the Champions League qualifier. That's Andrew Robertson, Scottish left back, signed from Hull City. He is up and down that flank, he can cross the ball, he's good defensively. I really can't understand why Moreno's starting ahead of him, so that's my third top.
Two players signed from Hull. Interesting.
Yeah, from Hull, that's right.
To Hull and back.
Hull City last season. He was a mainstay left back.
And flops?
Flops, I've gone for Oxlade-Chamberlain as well, actually.
Ooh.
For me, he's been and is a squad player at best for the last however long he's been at Arsenal. Not consistent enough. I'm not convinced he's a central midfielder as he seems to think he is. In terms of the players they've got, I think he's going to struggle to get into that side, and he's going to struggle to hold down a spot, even if he does get a few games. I think he's another Walcott, to be honest. Still waiting for him to fulfil potential he's had for the last sort of 5-6 years. My next flop is Oliver Burke, who was signed from Leipzig for West Brom. I saw quite a lot of this guy playing in the Bundesliga. Watched the Bundesliga highlights. For me, the only way it might sound a bit harsh, but the only way I can describe him is he's a bit of a Forrest Gump. He's the sort of guy you give him the ball and he can run with it, and that's about it. There is not a lot going on upstairs. He can't pass the ball. There's no final ball. He's just fast.
I think he's the Scottish football's brightest hope, which is a bit worrying.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the players that they've sort of produced over the last 20 years, and I think that kind of says it all, really. Yeah, for me, that's it's not going to go anywhere. I don't see him being in the Premiership for very long, Premier League for very long.
Interesting.
Thirdly, I had to sort of get one City player in there. It's De Niro for me, based on the fact that they've signed Kyle Walker as well, and I think obviously it's been obvious so far that he's going to be their first choice at right back. I think De Niro did actually play at left back in one of the games. Again, saw him playing quite a bit, signed from Real Madrid, saw him play quite a bit for them. He's okay going forward, as you expect from a Madrid fullback, but very suspect at the back. They've paid a lot of money for him. Just can't see him doing a lot this season.
Yeah, he sort of played some sort of unusual free role as well at the weekend against Liverpool, sort of moving into midfield, and it was very, very strange. But
Pep does what he likes.
Very Guardiola-esque. That,
very
didn't he?
Guardiola. So in terms of scoring, so for the tops and flops, we use the Who Scored Football Statistics website, and to give a bit of a run through, 3-1. So on the flops, we have, drum roll please, in third place, Bernardo Silva from Orlando. Second place is the Scottish hero, Oliver Burke. And in first place, Marko Arnautovic is the lowest ranked of all of the flops. So we'll see how that goes over the course of the season. In terms of the tops, third place is Andrew Robertson. Second place is Harry Maguire. So the whole boys in third and second. And number one, we talked about him earlier. He's got a lovely new song by the United Faithful. It's Red Rom, Lukaku. So top goal scorer in the league so far. So no surprise to see him head and shoulders in front. So we'll come back to these every week.
I think special mention to Nick from last week who called the ball one early. So
great shout.
So,
great shout.
Have to give props to Nick for that
absolutely.
one, calling that one early. So not here, Nick, but not forgotten. That was a great shout. Well
No,
done.
really interested on the De Boer sacking. I think obviously he's really early going. He didn't get. He wanted to run before he could walk. You know, they really broke down his. If you look at the way he's set up in his team, and you know, he's trying to win the Grand Prix with Ford KA almost. But interestingly, I heard an interview from Martin Edwards earlier in the week, and he's talking about Fergie, and a lot will be made of the FA Cup game when Fergie's job was at risk and we won, but they actually said it wasn't that one game. They were going to review it at the end of the season. They're going to give this guy a chance and see how it went. Obviously, there was difficult points in the season when results weren't going well, but that was the plan. And there's just no time for that anymore in the Premier League. It's just 4 games is just madness. I don't disagree that he was the wrong man from day one. I think Palace, if they're going to do that, they're going to need to bring in lots of new players to play that way of that style of football. If you looked at Allardyce on Monday Night Football earlier in the week, it was very specific around what you can do with that kind of squad.
He was very much back to basics, wasn't he, Sam? Really,
back to basics, and that's effective. But interesting. So we'll see how that progresses over the course of the season.
And looking just briefly at deadline day, because it, in my opinion, certainly was a bit of a washout. And I think a lot of the business is being done much earlier, certainly with the clubs that have got that financial clout, i.e. United, City, Chelsea, amongst others. Obviously, the main talking points will probably be the Van Dijk and the Coutinho and the panic bid of 90-odd million for Lamar from Arsene Wenger. So it's more about what didn't happen rather than what did happen. Just a quick note on the fact that next season there is going to be a change, isn't there?
New change in the laws. So that will be the transfer window will shut before the start of the season in England. So it'll still be open across the continent, which may put Premier League at risk.
I think there's a simple solution for this. I think people have been going way too much into it. I think if you're going to close the window, it also needs to be closed full stop. So you can't leave anywhere. If your club window, if you can't buy anybody, you should not be in a position to be made vulnerable that you can have anybody bought from your club. I think that is the only way around it. Like you said, you can't have the fact that you can no longer sell anybody to the Premier League, but if Real Madrid, PSG and Barca and Juventus or Bayern come sniffing around your Coutinhos, your whoever it is, that I don't think that is very fair, and that leaves the Premier League more vulnerable.
Yeah,
it needs
definitely.
to be an even playing field. So I think an easy way to do that is it's an open, close case. You can't go anywhere, even if you wanted to, so just forget about it. And players know, managers know, clubs know, and there's no more of that saga, really.
Yeah, either that or for me, there's not a great deal of difference in terms of start dates for the major European leagues, so have them all shut at the same time.
Yeah, agreed.
That'll do it.
Agreed. So just moving ahead now, looking forward to what we're going to be having in terms of fixtures for United. We've got games coming up thick and fast before the final the final competitive matches of the international break before next year's World Cup. So first things first, we've got another home game at Everton, and then moving on to another home game, Burton Albion in the League Cup, before away games at Southampton, trip to Moscow, and then finally again at home to Palace before the international break. So you could argue those were all games that we really should be expecting to do well in.
Should be picking up points. I think seeing Rooney back at Old Trafford on Sunday will be interesting. I think you'll get a hero's welcome, deservedly. You've got Burton in on Wednesday, where we'll see the Iceman again back at centre back, which again at home. I think away, you could be looking at that as
could be a banana skin.
But home really, there's no small pitch element. And then we've got another away trip, Southampton, and then Moscow. As you say,
at least it's in September, isn't it? Moscow. You don't want to be going to Moscow at the end of December if you're -8.
It's a very, very good point.
I think so. We've got a good end of the deal in terms of the Moscow trip there, so that's probably in our favour. So we have to look to be taking advantage of that, really, in my opinion.
Yeah, and then close the month with a home game at Roy Hodgson's Crystal Palace, which will be interesting.
Yeah,
to see what they've done in the meantime.
Yeah, I think certainly at home, in my opinion, the players seem to believe more that we're going to win games, whereas last season, those 0-0s, those 1-1s, there was almost a nervousness and a desperation that we just weren't going to go over the finish line, whereas now, even though teams are still employing the same methods, I just feel like there's an air of confidence, whether that's coming from Mourinho or the players, that we are going to get the win and it is going to come. And I think, I wouldn't say we're necessarily got Old Trafford a fortress again, but I feel confident that we're going to win football matches, which is
absolutely. I think as well, with the personnel we brought in, i.e. Matic, I think Mourinho has sort of unleashed the forward players a little bit more to be a bit more expressive and to get forward and sort of increase the pace a bit, because he's trusting in the foundation we've got sort of in midfield and that spine at the back as well. And I think that's been a massive part of our start to the season.
Yeah, no, absolutely agreed. Just want to say thank you for following our podcast today. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Please feel free to leave some comments on the YouTube page. Obviously, this is something which is quite new to us, so we would appreciate your feedback, both positive and negative, because we're looking to improve going forward. Our next feature will include the games which we've just mentioned. Please subscribe to our channel, follow us on Twitter, and again, I hope you enjoyed it. So from me, Orlando, and from Mark, and from JP, thank you very much for listening to Southern Manx. By the fans, for the fans, and we hope to hear from you soon, guys. Take care.